the water going?
No. Now got a well guy.
Suppose he had a lot of calls today because of the lightning that went through.
Maybe, but this guy coming over from Hilo was cough. But cough. He said, well, it's not alcoholic service guy. He was in Hilo. He said, well, he wants to, if I don't have water, he won't come. Back up to the- so,
Right, it was, I had 2 circuits blown in the house that had never blown before.
Because of the storm?
I assume, yeah. Our master bedroom, and it's got some kind of a special breaker. It's got a little box and a green.
Chairman,
There you go.
Gentlemen,
Hi, Scott.
I have a pair of ear things I can listen to TV. There is a little plug that goes into the wall. Don't work. They worked last night.
I'm going to call this meeting to order at 2 o'clock. We have Heather Hedinger standing by. We'll get her on the top, so I'd like to get it moving. Guess we can stand for the pledge today. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bear,
Yes, here.
Mr. Christensen,
Present.
Mr. Polk, and Mr. Walter.
Here.
All present.
No public standing by. Not notified today. We'll move on to approval of agenda.
Move to approve.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, hi Heather,
Hi, Heather.
I got her.
Hi there.
Hello.
where are you on your vacation?
So, so actually, we did not end up going anywhere. My husband's birthday was yesterday, and we normally go somewhere to fish, but with all the rain and heavy water flows, we did not end up going anywhere. So, I am currently in Traverse City right now.
Are you in your office?
I am.
On vacation? That's horrible.
Um,
Well, John Pope, I'm glad you had suggested this last, because I think this is an important question. I asked Heather to, at this point, to simply, this is not her fishing, fish stocking report. If you saw that email, that report happened, I guess, the May meeting.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Unfortunately, Dan Lagos, our fish supplier, his daughter passed away in her sleep about a week ago, and so he's taking care of some personal things. So we don't have a final quote for fish yet. So the May 3rd meeting, I think, still gives us enough time to get that information from Dan and still meet the deadlines that we have with you guys. So we'll postpone that for now.
Okay. I know the one thing that's critical in terms of timing is that we have that final dollar figure or an invoice so we can do the process, 2 steps of voting to make
Yes.
sure that check is cut.
And what I'll do is I have the documents that I normally present to you ready to go. I just need the updated numbers from Dan. So as soon as I get those completed, even if it's next week, far in advance of the meeting, I will send those to Laurel and have them distribute them to the group so that you guys can put eyes on them well in advance.
Excellent. And that'll keep us moving at the May meetings.
Cool.
I asked Heather also, and this is for today's meeting, to give us her opinion of the weed management situation in the pond. And the basic question is, for her opinion on this, is can we manage this ourselves? Not hire outside service and manage it in such a way that we're really spot treating the pond instead of a wide broadcast covering the whole thing.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely, I don't know if everyone in the group has seen this document, but back in 2012, we had a similar exercise where we talked about what our 3 options for weed control in the pond were at the time. And at the time, those options were mechanical, and by mechanical, I mean a person, mechanical physical harvest of the vegetation. So that was option 1. Option 2 was the use of weevils, which target the Eurasian water milfoil, which really is kind of the problem. There's a number of species of aquatic vegetation, at least at the time, in that pond. And the one that was creating the biggest heartburn when it came to the pond being usable for fishing was the Eurasian water milfoil. The weevils specifically target that milfoil and eat it. There was only one company in the Midwest at the time that was raising those weevils, selling them, using them as an aquatic control. It had really good success. I had a number of lakes that utilized that option. And unfortunately, the margin just wasn't there for them, and they were unable to be profitable selling that means of control. So despite it being ecologically the best option on the market, they just couldn't make it. They've got a business to run. So in the midst of us having this discussion, they kind of went out of business. And then, of course, option 3 is chemical control. At the time, we strongly decided that we did not want to go the chemical control route. And so we continued to do the physical or mechanical harvesting. And there's been a long history of that. It started out just those of us who were on the Kids Fish Day committee. We roped some Boy Scouts into it. We had Brian and Grayson out there, some other various county staff. Sheriff Borkovich kindly offered up some folks from his facility that needed to do some community service. So we've had all sorts of people out there, and it is labor intensive. To be quite frank, it's a pain in the keister. It's a solid day. Then you've got to let stuff de-water essentially, and then you've got to haul it away. So there's some significant time and manpower involved in that. When we decided to go the chemical control route, I was very hesitant. From a fish standpoint, we always have concerns with the chemical treatments, not just the fish. I mean, the fish is a significant issue. Copper is a product that's often used in chemical controls, and copper is a mucus irritant to fish. So we use it, the department uses it to move fish around. Like if we're raising walleye fry in a pond and we want to push them to the edge of the pond into our nets, we will actually apply copper sulfate because it's a mucus irritant. It dries them out and agitates them, and they will move away from it. So that's an issue. We also see issues with aquatic insects, especially when it comes to copper, or some of the cocktails that they use to do this, the spraying are essentially very similar to, if not the same formula as something like Roundup, which can negatively affect aquatic insects. So there's concerns there. I had what I felt was a very good long conversation with a couple of staff members from the company, where we discussed what the pond was being used for, what we needed to see as a result in the pond, how I felt that the pond needed to be treated in order to maintain the goals of getting rid of A, the invasives, B, enough vegetation to make it fishable, right? And I felt after that discussion that we had a very positive discussion, that we were on the same page. And then a couple of weeks after
You're referring to 7. You're
What's that?
referring to-
Say
you're
yes,
referring to
yes.
7
Save
that
and pond
service
management.
that we hired before, right?
Yes, yes. So a few weeks after they did the initial application, I went out there and I was horribly disappointed. We had discussed, spot treatments and maintaining some beds of vegetation, even if they were milfoil, to keep cover in the pond, and it kind of looked like a bomb went off. There was very little vegetation left, sand bottom exposed. you could see fish very clearly cruising around, and they had kind of nowhere to hide, no cover for them or anything like that. So to be quite honest, I went from feeling like we had a very good understanding of a plan to manage that pond, to feeling like it was pretty much all thrown out the window. So that's kind of how I feel about what ended up happening with that chemical treatment.
Well, Ken, you and I've talked about this some, Ken, is an alternative. And Scott and I haven't talked about the whole manpower issue involved in this, but can we then look at a reasonable plan of our managing this ourselves with, say, some other application of the chemical, pellets, whatever? I mean, I don't know the whole market availability, but do you think the ponds are small enough we could manage spot treatment on our own?
100%. Yep. 100%. For us with that, I'm sorry, you're kind of breaking up there. Yeah. So, obviously Scott, I'm sure, has a pesticide applicator's license. So it would be within our bounds to be able to take that management over ourselves. And do it on a much smaller scale, in a scale that still is leaving some cover there for fish, still is leaving some vegetation along the shorelines, and creating spots for people to access and fish it, and just do the whole thing on a much smaller scale, rather than nuke the whole thing. The other issue you kind of run into is when you treat something broadly like that, and you essentially wipe all of the vegetation out, what you've done is you've created kind of a clean slate. And so now you've lost the predictability of where these plants are going to grow, right? Because now you've got this open canvas. And unfortunately, what tends to come back first is the invasives. So you kind of get in, when you do a mass treatment like that, you kind of get into the slippery slope of, now you're chasing your tail, right? Because now you've got this blank canvas, you've opened the door for things to come back because it's an unutilized niche. There's nothing growing there, so it can become established anywhere. And now you kind of get in this cycle of chasing your tail, treating it repeatedly and spending a lot of money on it repeatedly to try to keep the vegetation at bay, and it's become unpredictable. Whereas if we go, so now maybe we kind of watch things this summer, let things kind of come back. Maybe we do a little bit of manual removal prior to the event, watch how the vegetation kind of reestablishes itself. And then we go in and say, this clump's a problem, and we treat those two specific locations. That can be done in-house. The products to do that are available. There's a Henrietta Hills Fish Farm is in Wexford County. We've actually purchased fish from them in the past for this pond. It just so happens in the current day and time, they're significantly more expensive than Lagus's Fish Farm is. But Dan also specializes in pond management. And so he is a distributor of aerators and pond rakes and various types of chemicals that can be used to treat small ponds. I've consulted with Dan on a number of projects for private individuals. So it is something we could certainly do in-house, I think probably for a fraction of the cost.
Do you know that name? What was that name again, Heather? This is John.
Oh, hey, Jen. That would be Dan Vogler at Henrietta Hills. And so if you want to peruse, just to kind of make yourself familiar, if you go to their website, Henrietta Hills Fish Farm, you will see that there's a tab called Pond Management. And he has everything under the sun that somebody with a small pond, such as what we have, could possibly ever need to manage their pond, whether they want it to be a bathtub or they want it to be a very natural looking setting. So he's very experienced with that kind of thing. And like I said, I've worked with him on a few different projects now where I've pointed a property owner in his direction, and the two of us have been able to consult the property owner to keep their pond manageable and happy and healthy from an ecological standpoint.
Heather, this is John again. In the beginning, I didn't quite hear you. You said something about mechanical removal. Run by that again. Were you talking about Brian, who we had before? Because I thought. I heard that.
Yeah, and so there are rakes. I don't know whose possession they're in at this point. We used to keep them at Taylor's house. But we've done the mechanical or the physical removal. We've had 4 or 5 different groups of people in there, trying to get that done. So we know we can do that. It's just very time consuming, and you need to kind of have a very well-established plan to get that done. Still kind of my preferred method, but I do understand too that it takes 4 or 5 people, and it's a couple of days worth of commitment, and it's pretty intensive manual labor. So I do understand that it's got some limitations, but big picture, that really probably is the best thing to do.
No, we have not yet. Myself, this committee has not yet met with the Lake Leelanau Lake Associations. Brian Price and Ron Reidick, for them to give us their opinion of what they might like to see us do. I know that they're not interested in our cutting up a whole lot of little chunks of it. I mean, that somehow might get down Meaver Creek and somehow get all the way out there, etc. So I don't have any feedback from that side of it.
Yep.
We have agreed we want to work with them. We want to work and use their advice and use some of their expertise in identifying what's going on. But I don't have that feedback.
Yep. And I certainly can certainly appreciate their concern. Some of that, and I would feel more strongly about it if I knew that there was a huge milfoil bed where Meebert enters South Lake Leelanau. I don't know that there is one. I don't know that there isn't one. It's not anything I've looked for specifically in the lake. But we can alleviate some of that concern simply by when we perform the mechanical harvesting. So milfoil will transfer 2 ways. The most effective way for it to transport is when it goes to seed. And so when milfoil goes to seed, it develops this little seed packet. It's about the size of a quarter. It's called a turion. And if you disrupt those turions and they become mobile, that's where you run into the issue of the plant being able to be transported. That's the most efficient way. That milfoil can also, it has been shown to be transmitted through fragmentation, where like you would cut a stem off of the plant and it might root itself somewhere else. That method of transportation seems to be somewhat limited in how far it can go. A bird could pick up one of those turions and take it and drop it somewhere and it seed into a new plant. Or in an exceptionally high water event, those turions can become mobile and be washed downstream. Fragmentation seems to still be mobile, but not quite, from what I've seen in my research, not quite be as mobile. So, I think that we could be cognizant of when the plant goes to seed and avoid cutting then, so that those turions are not disrupted. And we could also do something along the lines of installing a biofilter, something essentially like like the black mesh screens that you would use along an erosion control project, to try and keep any of the plant fragments from moving downstream in the couple of days that we're in there, chewing things up, messing around with the plants and suspending things. So I think there are some options we could employ to prevent or mitigate for those pieces of the plant from moving downstream.
Now, the mechanical cutting that was done before, and this ended, I think, my first year on the commission, so maybe 7 years ago.
That sounds about right. Yeah, 6 or 7 years ago. Yep.
My understanding is that was a road commission employee who rigged up his own horizontal hedge trimmer.
Yeah, so he was doing it a little bit differently than we had at the past. So when I first started working on the Kids Fish Day in 2009, Pete Taylor had some long-handled rakes and some throwable rakes made. And so we
do one
okay.
Full razor blade setup for cutting,
Yes.
and then also the rake for dragging in the material. We have Parks bought a set of those.
Okay.
Last year.
Okay, good. And so when I started, we would put 2 or 3 of us in the water with those rakes, and we would physically rake the material up and put it up on the shoreline. And then we had someone else who was dragging that material up onto a tarp and kind of spreading it out. We would leave it there for a couple of days to, get all the water out of it, make it lighter, basically was what we were trying to do there. At which point in time they were taking it and disposing of it in a landfill. And so we did that for a number of years. We had some various help. It started out mostly fish committee members. We had a Boy Scout troop come and help a couple of times. Sheriff Workovich loaned us some folks who were spending some time with the county that needed to do community service. We had a crew from the sheriff's department come and help us. And then when it kind of got to the point where we couldn't really get enough volunteers, or the volunteers that we had were not physically able to do that anymore, was when Brian kind of stepped in and we were utilizing his services.
And then that ended several years ago, 3 years ago, or 4 or something.
Yeah. Yep.
Let me back up. Do I recall that you said, did I hear you correctly, that you would optimally not recommend no treatment chemically this year, wait and see how things grow, and then from that make a plan for the next year?
That would be what I would be leaning towards. I mean, it's not my property. Obviously, you guys have the final say, right? But with such a small body of water, and the fact that we are trying to keep fish in there, kind of year round, even beyond the time frame that we have the specific event, right? We want fish in there throughout the course of the year so people can enjoy it. It's because it's such a small body of water, it really kind of makes me uncomfortable to do extensive weed treatments in there. We want to make sure that our plankton numbers are good. We want to make sure that our bug community is healthy so that those fish have something to eat. We want to avoid creating this very sterile pond that develops an algae problem or isn't creating enough nutrient cycling to maintain the fish throughout the course of the year and throughout the course of the summer. That it's a shallow pond, and so vegetation in there, it does it choke it out? Sure it does, but it's also creating oxygen in there. So it's another step we need to have in there, another key factor we need to have in there to make sure that those fish can survive in there, maybe when temperatures aren't quite as optimal. So doing any large scale weed treatments or multiple chemical weed treatments across the course of the year kind of gives me some heartburn, if I'm being honest. I would almost rather see how the vegetation reestablishes itself. And maybe we need to do a little mechanical trimming, immediately prior to the event, but I would rather see how the plants reestablish themselves and make a game plan going forward, as to how much and where in the pond we need to target on a small scale.
Didn't we do that last year? I mean, there was no treatment last year.
Yeah, there was no treatment last year, so that's what I was going to ask. Did you see it last year? Because I think we do have an algae problem.
We do have an algae. We did have an algae problem mid to late summer. I have not been to the pond since right around Labor Day. So,
Is the algae problem that we had, which seemed to be predominantly along the shore and just this real thick mass. Is that something we need to control? Is that another control issue or?
well, and this is kind of why I don't like to do chemical treatments. I don't really want to point any fingers, but this is kind of a pattern that we tend to see emerge, right? So you go in with the best of intentions, trying to eradicate an invasive, and things kind of seem to snowball. The next thing you know, like I said, you're kind of in this pattern of treating things all the time as it moves around, and now you've developed an algae issue. We do see that sometimes in water bodies where you have an abrupt change. Like, for instance, all the vegetation or a majority of the vegetation is removed. You still have nutrients coming into that system. You still have things in that water column that need to be utilized. And that opens the door for that algae to be the only thing that's utilizing it. And now you have algae bloom issues. And the algae too is something we can manage mechanically or physically, if you will. The algae that we saw on the pond last year, as Dave alluded to, was a very thick gelatinous algae. It took off because it had nutrients available to it that typically would have been being uptaken by plants in the pond. And so it was a significant algae bloom. I was by the time that I got out to look at it, it had been going on for a couple of months, and I'm sure we had a fairly mild fall, so I'm sure it continued for a couple of months after that too, at least through September. But that is another thing that you could manually remove with those rakes, dry it out, and then dispose of it in an appropriate landfill.
Yeah, that's where manpower issue comes in.
Yeah, it does.
And my colleagues here chime in with questions or whatever. I'm surprised. I don't know what to do about this, not treating any this year. Seems like we're going to have an awful bloom of plants then again through the whole summer without a lot of mechanical raking, and I don't know how reasonable that is.
Right.
Our planning.
Yeah. The plant reestablishment that last year to me wasn't terrible. It certainly didn't go right back to where it was prior to chemical treatment. And a lot of it, I did not do any official sampling. I didn't throw any rakes out and grab a sub sample and ID, but from the surface, to me, a lot of it looked like milfoil. So we could certainly go the route of spot treating it ourselves this year, if that was an option that the county wanted to pursue. I just don't think we necessarily want to go down the road of doing a massive chemical treatment like what was done in the past.
Okay. Is there a chemical treatment, I'm thinking of, done by shore because of where the algae was such a problem, that can be used in a spot treatment way for algae?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. There are a number of products we might need to look. So typically typically that thicker, more gelatinous algae is what we call a filamentous algae, where if you were to take the clump and kind of pull it apart, it would be very stringy and have a more plant-like appearance than a typical algae. You know, a lot of times we see algae that's very bright green and it's very slimy. It looks like the slime, the slime that all the kids play with, right? And so that's a smaller cellular algae. So we would need to go and take a look at what algae we had, because the two different types are treated a little bit differently. But there are a number of options that we can use to treat the algae as well.
We've got to move along. We've got some other things to do, so I want to
Yeah,
get
it
more
seems like-
questions and
yeah.
talk here and then wrap this up.
Okay, it seems like we could do a blend. If we did some spot treating in, say, the 10, 12 spots that are absolutely necessary for kids' fish day, and leave the rest to vegetate, and possibly raking if we can locate some manpower to facilitate those specific spots. So we have, and I don't know how many spots we would need to treat. It would be up to, maybe Alan can help, and Kids Fish Day people point out the spots that need to be spot treated, and then to figure out the timing.
Well, I think clearly we have our group here has some discussion to go through.
But I think what Steve's pointing out is a good point. You know, we have certain sections of the pond that kind of essentially could be left alone. So,
Yeah.
you know, closer to the road, there's a section of shoreline that's inaccessible. There's a bunch of really nice pine trees that grow along the edge. Kids can't fish there. That's not necessarily a location that we need to worry about, right? That could almost be an area of refugia, if you will, where we don't mess with the plants, and fish have a known location that they can go to for cover. And some of the other locations, you know, in front of the main picnic area, on the other side of the bridge, that are already a little bit more wide open, the sun is getting to them, that's where kids are going to go to fish. You know, we focus on those areas where we know people are utilizing the shoreline. And we kind of, some of those corners that are a little bit more vegetated on the shoreline with thicker trees and brush, and we leave those alone and create kind of little areas of refuge for those fish to go hang out when the sun is high, or you know, when they're small, that kind of thing. So you know, between trimming shoreline, maybe chemically treating some algae, combination of spot treating chemically for the actual aquatic vegetation, and maybe doing a little raking, I think that we can employ all those methods to get to where we really need to be without nuking the whole thing.
Is there a specific time that it goes to seed, or does that happen all along through the season?
There is a specific time. I do not know when that is off the top of my head. I'm sure it's temperature driven and daylight hour driven. So I made a note here. I will look into what time of year it is that milfoil typically drops those turions. I'm sure it's probably early to midsummer, June, July, but I will double check on that and make sure we know.
If you could also then perhaps identify when the timing on algae treatment along the shore.
Yep. And that is a little bit dependent too. Algae is kind of one of those things that you almost have to wait for it to present itself. You don't want to wait too long. You know, so the first instance that we're seeing algae show up, we should address it. But you do kind of need to wait until it actually starts to form so that you know what form of algae you're dealing with so you can treat it appropriately. There are companies that will have you preemptively treat for algae. But I think you get into a slippery slope of applying chemicals that you don't necessarily need because you're making an assumption without seeing what's actually happening. So typically we advise that you wait until your algae is actually showing up, figure out which form of algae it is, and then use the correct application for it.
John, you have a question?
No, I just would say that I would help if you use some mechanical.
I see. Well, right now, I'd like to wrap up, Heather. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And I apologize for not having fish numbers. We'll get those though.
Well, yeah, we'll get that covered. Yes, thank you. This has really helped, but we've got some discussion here about which directions and what's
Super.
real, what's possible for us.
Okay.
So this will help, and then I'll stay in touch.
That sounds like a plan.
Thank you.
Thanks,
so much.
Heather.
Thanks, guys. Have a good afternoon.
You too. I'm not sure how much farther we can go in this discussion right at the moment.
Let's just keep it as an open item for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think our recommendation to the Parks and Rec Commission would be to do
Thank you.
a multi-faceted approach this year, including investigations from the Leelanau Lake Association and spot treating and raking and watching for algae bloom.
Okay. That really gets to the only point that's important right now. Salmon Lake Services, in their communication in January, said we had until April 15th to let them know if we want a contract. So am I hearing some consensus that we
Let's hit the pause button.
hit the pause button on that kind of contract service and plan not to use them this year?
Yeah, it's interesting that so much effort went into putting a plan together for spot treatment with salmon, and that didn't happen. And I wonder how that came about, actually.
Well, I think because I didn't know enough about what I was looking at and watching when they sprayed, because I was the only one out there other than them, having listened to Heather talk about spot treatment. And I just don't think we needed more management on the ground. I mean, Heather or somebody can do a little bit more.
What spot treating looked like.
Yeah, what spot treating looks like. So I think that's where that broke down. I certainly communicated that to them. I hadn't heard some of Heather's earlier statements about it. She's really hesitant to get into chemical treatment at all. Especially on this size. I didn't get that from 3 years ago or 4 years ago. But
Yeah.
But do I hear, can I judge that it's consensus here that we push pause on salmon and not engage? So
Yeah, I move that we push the pause button to 7.
Well, do you want a consensus that you?
Or just consensus? Okay, just consensus. Yeah, push the pause.
Okay.
I think.
Then let's move along. I need approval of minutes for both the February 7th and the March 1st meeting. I must admit, I don't remember February 7th right now. I read the March meeting. I found it okay.
Move to approve the March minutes.
So are we not doing February?
No, I was just expressing my,
We have February's here and March.
right, and I just said, I didn't read February. I don't
I
remember.
read them both.
Can we do them both together?
Yes, we can do them both together. Give the emotion.
John, what did you think of the?
Well, before you discuss. is
I'll get a
Christine
motion.
seconding?
Okay, I move that we approve the minutes as presented for both February and March.
Second from John Walter. Discussion? Anything?
John, what did you think?
You read Tuesday. You read the read the February. So.
You read them both?
I've read them both. They're both here.
Are they good?
Yes.
So all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Spring planning update. We've already paid $305 for 60-some trees. Planning time is first week of May, roughly. It must be named now, the new canvas replacement, the new forester.
Oh, Ellie Johnson.
I'll work with Ellie to see about getting some manpower to get 60 trees planted. But again, they've been ordered. Steve says the bill's already been paid, it's $305. And we'll get those planted inside, principally, almost all of them inside the 2 existing protected corrals, which have been, again, hardened a little bit more, so we should get better survival out of these. That's Tom Adams' goal. Any question on that?
What was the varieties again?
Black cherry, bur oak, mountain ash, white birch, shagbark hickory, some more swamp, no. Guess we're not adding more swamp white oak. The swamp white oak we've planted have done the best. So he may not be adding any more of those. I don't know, nannyberry. No, that's 9-bark, excuse me. Serviceberry I got in there for sure, flowering dogwood, winterberry, witch hazel. So a nice mix of both of the trees and shrubs.
Excellent.
And I suspect the black cherry. No, John. Moving on to, well, if I may, let's jump to CIP. I submitted, I didn't get until the last minute that there was a deadline to get a fresh CIP set of submissions in. So as you all saw, I sent you an email with the list of what I was suggesting and some priority to it. So I went ahead and got that in, and it's included in not the back of this committee's packet, but our next meeting, the full commission coming up. So if you look at the back of that whole packet, you will see the items that I submitted.
Is it more than just 66, page 66?
I think it's 35 through 70,
It's all Veronica?
for the most part. There's one from Old Settlers. The first page will delineate in descending order depending on which is less expensive to most expensive. It's a spreadsheet. You had your hand.
Well, there are a couple that aren't Veronica, aren't there?
Well, the gazebo.
That's the only one.
It's invasive species,
There should be.
picnic, paved area,
Yeah, I've got.
UA
mine.
walkway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I added invasive species because in the definitions of capital improvements, it's something that happens every single year. We've got to focus on it every year. We'll be spending money on it every year. So I just put it in. I only put $2,500 for that, and I have no idea whether that's reasonable, but that's what we paid an outside contractor when they did the spray 2 years ago. For 2024, since we have some porta potty upgrades going on this year, I put in finishing that whole project at $35,000. 25, 26, 2025, and 2026. A shorter UA walkway. If you remember in the master planning, and I didn't prepare this for a packet handout, but in our master planning, we had a UA walkway coming around the ponds from the parking lot, all the way out into the prairie and back. What I put in there was this was in the email I sent to all of you, recommendation that we simply go with the parking lot just around the ponds.
Dave, don't touch the mic.
Oh, that's all right. I'm very sorry. So I put that in there at 75,000. Next one was for the years 26, 28, picnic enclosure. My description was simply large enough to include, to enclose generously, to cover generously 4 picnic tables, and be built for additional features in the future. What did I put on that? 65,000. Then for 28 and beyond, the paved parking lot. And I'm sharing this just to tell you all what I did to try to keep us more up to date and a little more close to the planning that we're doing, the discussions we're making, than all that we had in there before. Should anything else have been added? Because we can't.
That sounds like a pretty full plate to me.
It seemed like it was good enough to get us by that deadline, and knowing that things, you know, the dollar figures, the years, all of that's flexible year to year. as the planning goes on. It's just to get what I knew we've been talking about into everybody's view. Okay. Hearing no objections, I'll move on. John and Scott, we talked about where to put a pad for porta potties, where porta potties might be located with the new parking lot.
John and I did, not,
I go by that every day and there's just been snow and snow and snow and then piles of his stuff. So I kept my eye on it and finally this week it's clear. When I called Scott, he said he had already talked with John. That's fine. We thought we were gonna get out there today, but those thunderstorms and wells that didn't work and everything else.
Well,
If they've got together and they think they know where they want to put it, that might be fine, but I would still like to walk that area out. I'm not 100% sold on this paved parking lot. I do like our parking lot, but I am concerned on where we put these toilets. And I think we got a plan over there, I guess. I don't know.
We met yesterday, Old Settlers, and incorporated a meet, a walk around as a posted meeting, starting as just information gathering at Old Settlers and ending up here to finish the meeting and do any action items where we could be recorded. And that Old Settlers Committee kind of thought that was a good idea, just to kind of put the feet on the ground as a committee and just, how do we phrase that, Laurel?
In order to comply with the Open Meetings Act, you can't be deliberating towards rendering a decision. However, you can conduct a site visit and you can observe the different aspects of the park, and then you meet here formally and then discuss those aspects that you've noted.
Yes, you had suggested that
Yeah.
at the March meeting, that we might even do that for today, and I
Yeah.
didn't want to for today, but
They did that for Miles last year. It was quite successful.
how about May? Should we do this for the May meeting?
What have we got, Laurel, already going there?
May,
Yeah. We'll have Heather's fish report. Well, no, not for our meeting, we won't, no. That'll come from the full.
so you could really hold it at any point before the May meeting.
Yeah, the Old Settlers group is meeting at 1 on May 3rd. Wouldn't, I don't have to be there. I can pick and choose between which one I want to be at. If you want to meet also,
However, your support staff needs to be at both places and can't be at the same time.
So Steve is saying that Old Settlers already has May 3rd, that's our next meeting date booked up.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. So we could push it to the next month.
Or you could
Well, a
just meet
different day.
sometime in May.
Oh, that's true.
You
Just a
know?
different day.
Yeah.
just a different time.
Duh.
Because I don't think we have any action. Well, the only thing I have to be concerned about is, do we have any action at this level that has to be done before the May full Board of Commissioners meeting? And I don't think we do. I don't foresee anything right now. Because the action for Veronica really is full commission in May.
Have you already, well, have you already discussed the 2% allocation request?
No. Well, yeah, one of those years. I mean,
Yeah.
this committee is,
We just haven't heard back from Bill Watson.
That's correct.
That's what it is.
that's, we have not heard back from
So
Bill.
we actually even put 500
Yeah.
seed money out.
Yeah, and he had that information and I have to get back to it.
Okay.
By the way, personal opinion, I think this 2 years down the road, maybe we start after it earlier. I think this UA trail around the pond might be a good thing to go for a grant, 2% grant. Wife's gone after this, the goats,
Mhm.
invasive species mitigation, been denied twice. We're going to get it done, and I think we are this spring. We'll see. But if it doesn't go, I'm thinking we ought to change our plan as to what we might apply for.
Sure.
And that walkway might fit the bill. Now, one thing, I didn't think of this until today, I just plugging this into people's heads here. We haven't talked about this dam, this little, it's called a weir here, between the two ponds. It's just not in great shape. So we gotta look ahead at that.
Neither is the wall.
The wall right there, or the wall.
Either side of it.
Peninsula.
Yeah, okay.
For the kids.
I meant that whole thing, yes, that whole structure
No, not the dam,
itself with the wall
the
that,
wall where the kids fish off, right in front. It's getting bad.
okay. The wall near the dam or right in front of the parking lot?
In front of the park.
Okay, so along the curved walkway. Are those potholes still there?
Yeah.
Well, tell us about the wall.
Well, there's timbers missing, they're rotten, they're falling over, so that's part of the reason I haven't done anything, because I gotta get in the water. Repair that wall. So if there's nothing to back it up, it's just gonna go in the pot. If you walk around there, you'll see there's stuff missing and
Well,
Well, when we should probably set a date, because this we should look at for sure.
What if I meet with Scott out there sometime?
Okay, but I'm gonna get us a date early in May. We're gonna have our meeting that starts, it's a two-part meeting. We'll start there and walk around. We'll finish up back there. So the meeting will be a little bit longer.
The only way to understand it is to see it.
Yes.
I think May's too late.
Okay,
We should do it. We should do it.
well, my next week is gone. I'm here, but I don't have a lot of time, and then I leave on early Thursday morning. I'm gone for 9 days. So then I'm not back. I'm not available until.
I've got tree planting and a trip for the rest of the month, so I would say May 2nd is open.
Get done with tree planting at the entire month? Or what?
Well, it's a little bit of everything on the farm. There's prep, there's the trees that didn't come last year came this year on top of the ones that are coming this year.
And you're not coming back?
And I have a trip.
First day back that I can do anything is the 22nd.
Well, that last week then in April. we want to meet down there for like 1 hour.
Whatever, yeah, whatever a walk around takes, and then we have to be back here for at least some official.
How about the 25th?
What day of the week is that? I don't have a calendar.
It's a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday. 2nd of May.
I see. How about the 25th?
That's, sure. I'll see if I can do it.
And we're gonna meet at the park and then come here and meet.
That's what we need to
That's what
do.
Laura was
Yes,
saying,
in
yes.
order to meet the Open Meetings Act, that's what we gotta do.
We have to post it here and at the park site.
So
All right, what time?
that's what we need to
We
talk.
gotta move along here.
Yeah, we do. Well, this part's really important. What time of the day?
Midday is good for me.
7:30 in the morning.
No? Well, it's only, how long are we gonna be at the, well, no, that doesn't make any sense. Laura's gotta be there.
Well,
Wow.
What if we
Bring your
did?
fishing boat.
1 o'clock.
fine with me. Right now, I'm open on that day, I know. I haven't planned anything when I get back.
Well, we gotta find a room, and I guess if we agree on 1 o'clock, then she can confirm it. We get a room.
So 1 o'clock at the park, 2 o'clock here.
So,
Yeah, immediately follow, yeah. You're not able to check right now. on
I
the-
did, it's open.
Okay,
Okay,
There's
that's
a
good.
planning commission meeting at 5:30, so before that.
okay.
okay,
Let's give ourselves enough time.
What day?
At the
25th.
yeah,
It's time to get there, it's time to get back.
Okay,
I have to get it set up for the next.
I was
meeting.
just gonna wrap us up so you can
Okay.
have that time. So any other business or board comment to jump a little bit on the agenda?
I do. Are we done with the agenda?
Yeah,
I'd like to go back to this pond week, because when you closed out Heather, she was on there, and then right away you went to the approval of the minutes. Where are we on this pond? We still got a letter from the Lake Association that goes on and on and on, and it said that they're willing to help us assess this.
and I responded to that with a letter.
And are they gonna help us like in May? You want me to keep a hot button on this and Ron Remick meet us out there to look at these weeds as they're starting to come up?
Well, that's my intent, is to have that kind of walk around with those people.
We want to have it before Kids Day.
Oh, yeah, before
We're
kids.
not gonna spray before Kids Day. He wants to get the 2 cents in there of what we think we should be doing with that.
Correct. And that's what I was saying to Heather, is I have none of that feedback as yet.
Yeah, 'cause right now, there's nothing to feedback, but I mentioned here a half hour ago, I'd still like to have that on the agenda, the first part of May meeting is old business, whatever you do about the ponds, because we won't be meeting with Ron until after. that meeting.
Precisely. No, this is exactly what I had in my time frame, John, is that part of May's discussion and meeting has to be what we are gonna plan out of what we learned today with Heather.
Right.
We're not gonna hire staff. We've already voted on that.
So it'll be a subject yet on next,
On May's,
okay,
I mean, that's certainly gonna come up with part of our walk around as well, so.
we probably won't see much in this walk along.
No, we won't, but we're still gonna have to have that plan, because we don't have a plan yet. That's part of the big job we face immediately, is planning this weed management.
should we push parking lot design to the next meeting?
The only reason that was there was to see if we had a final opinion of Scott's replacement.
That's something we can look at when we're there, right?
Yes, exactly. So I think we can,
Great idea.
I think we can say
You
that.
got, bring this with you. Okay, good.
Just for the record, I'm fine with it, so. If I get hit by a bus or something.
But
it's-
this plan is revised and what has been done, it's been redrawn to the location of how the entrance is now.
I see.
So it's revised to the.
All right.
We'll talk more about that at our main meeting.
Jen will need a copy of that.
Oh,
Did I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Yeah, public comment.
Oh, excuse me. Public comment? Alan?
Yeah. Gosh, I didn't think that Heather was gonna be here till later, but I think she was mostly talking about just
We managed it.
yeah, okay, good. And I think we're gonna have a really good volunteer crew to help. And as far as cleaning up the pond and getting those weeds out of there, I think we'll have a good crew to help do that too, so.
Excellent.
I'll be talking with more about that point.
Okay, yeah, we're kind of expanding a little, I got some Boy Scouts who are really interested in helping. I don't know, I don't want them cutting, and I wouldn't want them out there really cutting weeds, but anyways, as far as helping with the event, helping organize stuff like that, so we're trying to expand a little bit that. We're thinking about doing that back pond, the back pond as in close to farthest north, which isn't much there, you know, and we've never really planted fish, but we've had some interest in some folks who actually wanted to show people how to fly fish, as opposed to just have a demonstration on dry ground, which isn't near as exciting as being able to bring in a fish. So, so that may be something that, as we're planting some bluegills, we're thinking about putting some back there and just let folks go and have fun back
I
there.
thought we always did.
No,
Well, are we talking two back ponds? The long pond?
No, the one in front is,
next to Ron's house.
yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I think it's shallower. It's not, I mean, it's not anything permanent, you know, but at least it gives them something to come up and do more than just, just dry ground fishing. I noticed, and I think one big advantage of Veronica Valley is that new handicap access you guys put in that little walkway there. I think it's outstanding. We'd like to help as far as getting word out on that, as far as letting folks know from maybe facilities and such as that, that's available for people to get wheelchair and get right down there and fish.
Well, as you heard, we've got some discussion that has to be done on its maintenance issues there, so.
And I'm assuming you're gonna, you know, that'll get taken care of. That's not something you can leave anyway, so that's gonna be.
I
And,
need to wrap us up here for Laurel's sake. Go
oh,
ahead.
sure.
She's-
Just-
Well, the only other thing I have, and this is more of on a technical. I just, and this, you know, maybe this is just me, and no offense, Laurel, I just don't know why Laurel needs to be there when you're gonna walk around. You can't make any decisions. You can't really talk anything substantive as far as towards a decision, as opposed to just one of you guys take notes saying we met and we came back.
Well, that's because they usually don't take notes. They need someone to take notes for them.
Between the expertise on that board, it seems like someone could write down a note that we arrived, we walked, we left. Because that's really about all you guys can
That's
do.
what I do on a road commission.
It's just a thought. I
One
mean,
of us take some minutes.
it just, yeah, because it's not,
Well,
You know.
last year we took a video and uploaded a video of the sidewalk, so it was kind of nice to have that as a reference.
just, that's it for my comments. And thanks so much for what you guys do there and for, and, you know, we're kind of this independent group, but you know, I think we're gonna be tying knots a little closer with you guys, because you know, just because of the maintenance on the ponds and as you're developing, it really benefits the things that we hope to accomplish.
I certainly need to hear more from you about your ability to help our manpower issues, so.
Yeah, no, I should have stopped there. That would have been the highlight. All right, well,
All right,
thank you.
now, if we may adjourn. So moved. All in favor? Aye. Aye. You vote, yeah.
You said you had a whole bunch of volunteers,
We're going to have, that's,
Boy Scouts.
well, Boy Scouts are readily available. I mean, this is right up their alley. Yeah. It's in the mountain.
So if we wanted to mechanically pull some weeds out with a rake and stuff,
Well, they can help, but boy, you gotta be real careful. I don't even know if I put one out in a rowboat, truthfully. Yeah,
Sure.
but well,
Did we buy one of those weed cutters, Scott? The pull type deals?
We have a couple of those, and Dave got one that you throw out there and you pull across.
Yeah, that's what.
One floats, one sinks.
need some strong backs, that's about it. Okay. Think Boy Scouts gonna be,
Well,
that would be, we gotta talk, because we could just sign that up, sign them up for a day, you'd have a dozen kids with, a dozen kids with more energy than what I got left. Thank you. Appreciate it. No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
What was your name?
Alan Campbell,
Scott.
perhaps again, I don't know.
So there's all kinds of.
Yeah.
Just real cool.
Yeah. I see you from Minnesota, so maybe that area, there's a few places.